Hey, it's James from 4x4 Earth, and welcome to episode 37 of the 4x4 Earth podcast, Rally Driving with Bruce Garland.
Join James from 4x4earth.com as he learns all there is to know about four-wheel driving, camping, fishing, and getting out and exploring our great country on the 4x4 Earth podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the show. Before we get into today's podcast, a big thank you for everyone who has been listening on iTunes. Having a look at iTunes, we are the number one Australian-produced automotive podcast, which I think is really exciting. Not only that, 7 out of the top 30 episodes are 4x4 Earth podcasts, which completely blows my mind. And so our effort of producing a few more podcasts this year is definitely paying off. So, a couple of favours. Firstly, if you are listening on an Apple product, go into iTunes and leave a review. That makes a really big difference to help discoverability for us and push us up the rankings, which means that more and more people we're able to help more people who are looking for a good route to find that good route, and I think that's really important. Follow us on Facebook. We've got an increasing, about 30,000 people following us on Facebook now. The big reason for that is when you see a podcast come out, please share it. Really does help to... A lot of people are discovering either the podcast or the website for the first time through the Facebook work that we're doing. And last but not least, check out the merch in the 4x4 store. We've got t-shirts, caps, stubby holders, all of those sort of things. They're not overly expensive. The big thing is that it helps us to keep the servers running at night. There's a lot of cost involved with running 4x4 Earth. There's obviously the cost to produce and host the podcast. Hosting for the server is moderately expensive. It's a decent sized server because we're getting well over 200,000 visits a month, which pretty much makes us, I think, the largest free and independent four-wheel drive website, which is really cool. So check out the merch, grab a t-shirt. They're the Looking for a Good Route t-shirts, which I always find humorous when I'm walking around the shopping centre because you do get a few unusual looks. Definitely check it out because you're going to be helping us to continue to do what we think is really important, and that is promote safe and responsible four-wheel driving in the amazing country that we've got. So now let's get into our discussion with Bruce. I'll let Bruce tell you what he does. If you haven't heard of Bruce, he's got an amazing story about some amazing driving that he has done. So let's get on into it. Hey, Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. So before we get to start talking about all of your rallying experience, some important questions. What sort of four-wheel drive have you got?
I've got a D-Max and my wife's got an MUX.
Okay, and so why did you choose those? Why did you choose your car?
It helps because I was racing them, but I've pulled them apart to a million bits, and I've worked on them and driven them, and they're just a great car, especially when you do a long distance touring. You know, you just they eat up the miles, they don't eat up too much fuel. But when you do a couple of things to them, they handle excellent.
The engine's meant to be pretty good on them too, isn't it?
Really good. The best thing about the engine on the D-Max is it will make a heap more power. But the engineers, they detune it, so it's what it does is doing it really easy and lazily. So it's not stressed to make the power that's in the production car is not in a stress state.
Yep.
So they'll do 500,000. If you service them, you'll get 500,000 K out of them without any problems.
It's going to be interesting because I think Mazda is swapping from the Ranger to the Isuzu in their next model.
The Mazda, yeah, they've done a joint thing. I think Ford have gone their own way. So, yeah look, it's just because they just comes down from the trucks. You know, the whole history is designed about making it easy to live with, and you drive an Isuzu that's done 200,000 or 300,000 K, and it's still driving pretty damn good. You know, no oil leaks and that sort of stuff.
Now, what sort of mods have you done to yours?
The D-Max that I've got is actually, it's had a bit of done stuff. You know, it's got long-range tank and it's got some King shocks in it, and I got a different couple of tyre options. I do that with my wife's car as well. So if we're going up the East Coast and we're just going on the highway, I just use the normal tyre that comes with it. I got another set of rims. So when we go basically over the Blue Mountains and we're going to do something a little bit off the beaten track, then I'll just put some Toyo all-terrains, or if I really want to go right ride off-road, we'll go to the mud terrains.
Yep. Now, mud, snow, sand or rock, what's your favourite kind of driving?
I like the sand, like proper sand dunes. There's something exciting about going in big dunes, you know. We don't have too big a dunes here in Australia, but when you go to the Middle East and South America, they've got some absolute monsters over there, so they get your attention, and there's something special about going in the sand dunes, you know.
They're good fun. Now, I find that driving in sand dunes is the most it's like playing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a cross. If you're a good surfer, you'll be a good in the dunes. You know, it's like surfing waves sometimes, and you've got to get your confidence up. You have to have the car a little bit set up for it, you know. And it's not you've got to learn it, and people think you can just do it, but really, there's a bit of skill to get the best out of it and not be scared of going fully into the monster dunes and not being able to get on your own, you know.
Yep. Yep.
It's probably more challenging. The mud in the rainforest is a lot of fun, but the sand dunes they require a whole different skill level, you know.
Yeah, yeah. So the best track that you've ever driven and why?
I did one stage that was pretty amazing from Thailand through Myanmar into China on a development road in the middle of the monsoonal rains and with sheer drops off into the Mekong River. That was pretty amazing. So yeah, and it was only one car width wide, and then the mud sometimes was literally up over the headlights, not water, the mud of the road. So yeah, it was pretty hairy. That was a good one. But there's so many good roads in Australia, and that's one that sticks in my mind for just a sheer challenge, you know.
And what sort of speeds were you doing that at?
Sometimes we were down to 40 and up to probably 140, I reckon.
So what about in Australia? What track would it be in Australia that you'd...
It'd be somewhere above Cairns in the middle of just after cyclones hit, maybe probably the best way to describe it. So, yeah, I've seen some shots. I haven't been up too much in the high country when it's raining, but yeah, I suppose it was in the jungle, and it was just, you know, villages with people still had bows and arrows and spears and that sort of stuff watching. So there was a lot more just beside the road that made it really interesting. Wow.
All right, so the hairiest moment that you've had off-road, and what did you learn from it?
Probably the hairiest one that comes to mind, there's been many. The hairiest one was the first time we went to Dakar, and we were in the Atacama Desert, and they told us the sand dunes were a kilometre vertical, and we didn't believe them until we saw them. And then we actually going through the dune field, and we stayed on the GPS true, which actually meant we were going to go over this massive peak, but we realised we were the only ones up the side of this hill, so we worked out everyone was going around the side at the bottom of the base of this massive dune, so we didn't want to reverse all the way, you know, go back the way we came, so we just drove off the edge of the sand dune, which was a little bit of a mistake, but as we were going down, I remember I had the foot that hard on the brake. I said to the navigator, I said, this speed's okay, because we were literally bouncing. It was near vertical, and I can't go any slower because I can't push the brake pedal any harder. So the wheels were locked, and it was just skiing bouncing down the hill for probably about 5 minutes, I reckon, and then we picked up the track at the bottom. So yeah, it was sort of steering into the bounces, you know, but it could have gone really badly wrong. It didn't.
Wow. That sounds quite hairy.
Yeah. Look, once we went there, where there was no turning back, we couldn't stop and reverse back. It was pretty much a precipice, and then the cars were like little dots down at the bottom in the valley that you could see. It was a fair height, you know. So yeah, there'd be a lot of that. You get that in the big dunes, you know. And
what country was that in?
That was in Chile, in the Atacama Desert, and I think that area hadn't rained for 300 years or something. So it's a pretty dry place.
Wow. So, do you want to tell us a bit about the Dakar rallies then? What is it, and how did you get into it?
I've been doing motorsport since I was 16, 17, so that's 60 this year, so that's too long. You know, that's 43 years or something. So I always wanted to do, I was into rallying and the adventure of car rally, against the time and out in the middle of the night through the forest and all that sort of stuff. And then it developed. We started back in the 80s. We got involved with Mitsubishi when the four-wheel drive industry really changed. Before that, we had Land Rovers and a couple other four-wheel drives, but they weren't real nice to drive and long distance. They were slow and bouncy and didn't stop. And then the new wave of Japanese four-wheel drives came, and that got involved in doing, like, they were called the Australian Safari, which is like a mini Dakar. Well, those first ones were nearly identical to a Dakar. So that got the bug, and then the ultimate event is going to the Dakar. It's the most dangerous and longest, hardest motorsport event in the world. So, I won the Australian Safari about 5 times and around Australia Rally, and I dreamed always going to do the Dakar, but the cost of doing the Dakar is extreme. And I was fortunate enough to get a drive with Isuzu's Japanese team in 1998. We did one started in Paris and went down into Dakar, which is on the west coast of Africa, and through the Sahara Desert. But unfortunately, the car broke down about 8 or 9 days into the race, and I think it was in the desert for 3 days before we could get out. And but yeah, I was really, really wanted to do it, but just trying to get the team together in a budget is extremely difficult, because the event goes for 2 or 3 weeks on the other side of the world, and then there's so much logistics. The entry fees are just astronomical, and to enter a car for service crew is over $100,000. Then you've got airfares and 30 or 40 grand in airfares, and then about 40 or 50 in shipping, and then you got a car, and then you got to do all the development. So it's all telephone numbers,
It sounds hideously expensive.
Yeah, look, VW, when we were competing in South America in the first few years, the VW was spending $100 million a year. We were spending about whatever they spent on clothes, I think, for the team, because there were so many people involved. Yeah, look, the first year we had a 2-car team. We had a lot of sponsors from overseas, and we spent over $2 million to do the first one in South America. So there was 190 cars and 200 bikes and 100 and something trucks. So it's $1 billion event, and it's a massive event and extremely difficult.
I was going to ask how many cars there are. That's huge.
It's huge. It's the biggest motorsport event in the world. I think it ranks an annual event. I think it's the 2nd or 3rd biggest event in the world, behind the Tour de France. And I think it's about 4th if you count the Olympics and the World Cup soccer. So that's the sort of hot level of the event. You've got 100 and something different countries represented in the event. It's absolutely huge,
And do all of them spend that kind of money, or are there people doing it on the cheap? Or
well, what do you call on the cheap?
Well, I was going to say is $2 million on the cheap.
The minimum you need but the cheap in a car is about 500 grand. On the cheap in a bike is probably 150.
Yep.
That's the spend. It's such a huge event. It's such a big investment. It's a year-long project to get ready for it. You just don't go, I'm going to go to the Dakar just after Christmas and I'll start in November getting ready for it. You have to start in January. As soon as it's finished, you're starting to organise full-time for the next one.
And so how long does it go for? Like, how many kilometres is it? How many?
It's normally, it varies. It's normally 10 to 15,000 kilometres depends. It sort of varies from 13, 14 days to, I think the first one we did in South America might have been up near 18 days or something like that. So it's very, very grueling. You're doing a lot of kilometres, a lot of it at altitude. The temperature you can start in the morning, it might be -2, and then a few hours later it might be 45. You've come out of the Andes and down into the Atacama Desert, where I was saying it hasn't rained forever, and really dry, bull dusty. They call it fesh, and once park-in or even drive-ins is quite... You're on edge the whole time that you're not going to get bogged and then get hit or run over by a truck or another car, which happens quite a bit early on in the race. So, yeah, look, and because we haven't got the big budget, we sleep in swags every night and basically next to the car while they're working, and the whole area's, there's generators and welders and grinders and lights, and so it's a very noisy environment, and then you have to get in your swag and try and grab as much sleep as you can because it's really, really grueling mentally and physically as well.
So how many hours of driving would you be doing every day?
If you get the day might consist of getting up at about 5:30 or 6 o'clock, and then you got to get breakfast, pack up your swag, your gear so that it's ready to go. Then you might leave to anywhere between 8 and 9 o'clock. If you have a good day, you'll get in before the sun goes down, maybe mid-afternoon if you've had a real good day. If you've had a bad day, you may not get in till midnight, and then you've got to back it up again 5:30 in the morning, 6, and then again and again and again. And normally there's just one rest day, and the rest day all you're doing is a lot more maintenance. It's not really a rest day, it's just a day that you're not racing.
Yeah, yep.
So by the end of it, it takes even the fittest of the fittest dudes they're really hurting 3 or 4 weeks to try and get out after the event it takes to try and recover.
Now you're driving it's a timed event, is it? So fastest?
Yeah, it's a time. So driving on the road through the villages is all restricted time. There's a lot of time to do that, but they're all the speed limits restricted. Then we may drive 50k or a couple 100k, and then we'll get to the start of what's called the special stage, and that can vary from 150 kilometres to 700 kilometres. And then in that time, you're in the ones that are 700. Sometimes you don't see another human or anything for the whole day. If you get in a gap and you're not passing people, you may have passed a few people that you're fast with, and then you get into this sort of a dust-free environment. You may not see another human for hours and hours and hours because it's so remote and the train's so demanding, and the stuff they send you just go, there's no way a four-wheel drive's going to go there, and you throw the car at it and get through it, and you just go, wow, it's quite amazing, So,
now, how do you support people keep up then? Because I'm assuming that you're driving these unrestricted parts of the race at a pretty quick speed. So how do you support crew keep up?
Our car's a bit restricted because the way it's designed we do about 180 kilometres an hour, but we can't. It has to be a really good road to be able to do that. And most cars, some of the top cars may get to 200 kilometres an hour, but the service crew, they'll take another route. They'll be on the highway generally, and usually we won't see them at all during the day. We won't see them till the next bivouac, so usually they get there on time. Depends if we're doing a crossing a border. Border crossings tend to take a little bit longer. Sometimes they may not get in till the night time, so we might get in the afternoon, a few hours ahead of when they arrive if they haven't had any issues along the way, So it's very hard on the service crew as well. The whole crew is really working hard, getting very tired. I think the first year we did Dakar in South America, I think they worked 9 all-nighters out of the 16 nights, I think it was. They worked right through the night, and then someone went to bed earlier, and then they drove during the day while the rest of them slept.
How many people would you have in your support crew?
Well, you have to pay for every person 10,000 euros, so plus you have to have the car for them. So we can only afford to have 4, but some of the big teams will have 100 or 200 people to look after 3 or 4 cars. Yep.
So how does navigation... So you've got your driver and a navigator team then?
Yeah, we've got a driver and a navigator. And what happens is everyone has the same... They call it a GPS unit, and that has the route waypoint that you have to hit during the day. And also the navigator has a book of instructions.
Yep.
So he'll say turn left in 500 metres and then turn right next to the barn or whatever. And there's a whole list of instructions. And then when they go, what's called off-piste, where they'll then go on GPS, so there's no road. So basically when you're going across the desert, you have a course setting. Just say you had to go, course, the cap reading is 180, which is due south. Well, and you might pick a better way through the dunes, so you might vary. As long as you're within 10 or 20 degrees of that, you can do a little bit variation in the route and then try and pick it back up again as you're going through the dunes. It's a bit of a technique for a driver because he's interpreting. Navigator's got all the pictures and stuff in front of him. So in front of the driver, we also have just a cap reading, which is a number of the degrees of the compass. So if we have to sit on 180, I'll just be glancing at that and just making sure I'm not drifting too far off course. And the other thing you got to take into account is the GPS is about 3 seconds behind what you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you've done quite a couple of turns, it could be pointing completely the wrong way, and then you overreact and then you keep overreacting because you really got to do more than 3 seconds in one direction for it to settle back down again.
So is it dangerous? How many accidents do they have?
Oh, there's danger. I think that one's the most dangerous motorsport event in the world. I think, not counting the spectators, I think maybe 40 or more people have been killed during the event in its history. It's every year there's one or two, especially the bike riders. They're the ones that get fatigued more. So they're when you have if everything's going fine, it's not so too bad. But that very rarely happens. When there's something goes, you drop your bike and then you'll bend the brake lever or you'll break the gear stick off and then you got to limp. And then as soon as you limp and start running behind and you come in late, you get so tired you can't you can't recover. It's very hard to recover from a setback.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's when and then when you get dehydrated and then tired, and then that's when mistakes get made,
And they also have issues with spectators as well.
Yeah, look, some spectators at some of the stages in South America are insane, I think at the start in Argentina they were getting over literally 1 million people, and it just went way out of control. The officials didn't realise how big it was going to be. So the second year, I think they had 30,000 police to control the crowd just in and out of Buenos Aires. So there's just so much excitement from the people, and then they would just want to get a picture of the car with you and all that and stop. They don't want a picture of it driving past, and so they block the road. And you're on a deadline, and so it can get a bit exciting just doing the transports into the towns, So
wow, yeah.
You could get a regional town, that's quite big, and you could be 60k out of the town. You're in stop-start traffic just because the spectators are on the road, and you're just going really, really slow, trying to weave through them all to get to the bivouac, which may be in the in the showgrounds or whatever, in the big soccer fields or whatever. So it's that big when the bivouac's set up when all the teams are there. They need 6 hectares, which is about 12 acres.
That's quite a bit of real estate to find somewhere, isn't it?
Yeah, and then they fence the whole lot to keep spectators out for security reasons.
And so what sort of routes does it normally do? So there's been some in South America. Where else?
I've done one in Africa. Africa used to be, then it got too dangerous with terrorists and things, so that's why they had to move it to South America. But it's not, there's a problem with the spectators. It's just there's so many of them, and you couldn't, if you didn't have the fence, you wouldn't be able to work because there'd be just that many people in, it's like 10 times worse than the Sydney show in crowd, just to get a crowd crush. So, yeah, it's quite foreign. The people there haven't seen. There's some weird cars, buggies, and the trucks are huge and amazing. And there's a huge amount of excitement when the event comes into a town or a village. And,
what sort of vehicles tend to win it?
the factory teams win the cars because they just have the resources. They've got the best drivers. They're paid mega dollars to drive. All year they spend doing events and testing and stuff like that. So the last Peugeot's won the last 3 or 4. I think before that it was VW. So they're big dollar budget. They're massive, big teams. Huge. So you can't compete with them because they can. The cars are much faster, lighter, aerodynamic. They just drive them that hard. They put a new gearbox in. They just replace the front end every few nights. They put a new gearbox in at $100,000. I think they were going through every second night for 4 cars. So you just do your numbers with that.
Wow.
You can't compete with that. They're super reliable because they're just putting new stuff in it all the time. And they can hit things harder, and they just go faster. And they got their own masseuse to get rid of the kinks because it does hurt your body a bit. There's a fair pounding in the car and getting thrown around, and just the muscles that you're using, and it can get a bit sore. So
it's an amazing investment, and really that they make all of that effort just to be able to have the bragging rights in their marketing. Then
because I think the audience is I think it goes to 1.2 billion homes or something, so it's bigger than Formula One. It's huge. It's like, you've seen the Tour de France, how they have the crowds with the bikes and everything?
Yep.
Well, that's what the Dakar's like, and it can be like that off-road. People camp out for days, and I think we're a little bit sheltered down here because we haven't had too much history with people going in it. I mean, we have now. There's a few car drivers that have been in it, and Toby Price, he won it on a motorbike a couple of years ago. So there's a few Aussies. When we get a chance to go over there, we for a little country compared to have big, massive, Russian teams and everything, we fly pretty hard flag. We do a pretty good job. And
so how many have you done?
I've done 5. I did 1 in Africa and 4 in South America. Now I'm too old. The last I had a bit of health. I broke my back in the Atacama Desert in the sand dunes. I just misread them, and then it was about 7 years ago. Yes, I broke my back, and then I had dramas after that, recovering from that, and then I went back once, but then I had trouble with the car. So now my brain can do it, but my body can't.
Wow. What happened in the sand dunes then?
I can still picture it now. We were coming into these big sand dunes near the coast in Chile. You might have seen it they had them on Top Gear. They used a shot out of it in one of the Top Gear shows. And there was a bunch of spectators. There was bikes. I could see about 3 or 4 bikes, 2 trucks. And there was a third one, and there was cars everywhere all trying to get to this a waypoint, which is one of the GPS points, which was on top of this big dunes. And it's like it's all cratered, and so it's not a straight run up. You've got to pick your route. So I was looking at the dune, working out which way I was going to go, and also trying to look where the trucks that were near me, that they didn't come over a dune and land on top of me, so I didn't get in their way. So while I was doing that, I looked at the dune that I was travelling on, and it looked dead flat. But when I turned my head, it actually went down in a ravine and then back up again, and the illusion was that there was no crater there. And unfortunately, it hit that hard that I broke my back, and then it broke the engine mount off the side of the engine. It broke the metal. So it was a huge impact, and we bounced out of it. And then we got out of the car because we were both in huge pain, and took some tablets and Voltaren and Panadol and stuff, and then the pain sort of could breathe again, and then I thought, I've just bruised it, and I didn't realise I'd broken it. So then we had to fix the car, so some local people helped us strap the engine down because the engine had basically fallen over in the engine bay, and we strapped it up and put it on chocks. We actually used the snatch strap to sit the engine on so it would sit on something soft. because there was no wood in the desert, there's no timber anywhere. And then we drove it out, and then I went to the doctors, and eventually they put me in an ambulance and sent me to the hospital. So I was there about 5 days before they made a back brace so I could come home.
Cripes.
And that was the end of the rally for everybody. So a year's worth of work and all that money and effort, but things happen, you know. That's how it's dangerous, and with the dangers also a high degree of excitement, you know.
Yeah, yep. What an epic story. So the thing I'm getting out of it is that it's pretty dangerous. It's probably not the kind of driving that I'd be doing, but it's epic nonetheless, and amazing the kind of places that he's driven with. So we'll finish here and we'll come back next week with the second episode of our interview with Bruce Garland and his rallying adventures.
4x4earth.com is used by over 200,000 people every month to find great tracks, organise trips, and find out how to better enjoy exploring the great outdoors. There's over 1,000 tracks and 300 campsites ready for you to explore. So check out 4x4earth.com today and sign up to get access to the track information, ask questions, and meet other 4x4 Earthers. Membership is completely free. If you're looking for a good route, check out 4x4earth.com today.